welcome à la santé et nous. My name is Melissa. If it's your first time to be here, you are very welcome. After watching this video, please make sure you like, you subscribe, you comment, and you share this video with your friends and family. On today's video, we'll be discussing about a topic which is very important in our community. Not many people are talking about it. It's a very sensitive one. It is happening, and it is happening more often than we actually speaking about it. I have someone on the platform with me who kindly agreed to come and share this topic, to come and discuss this topic with me, and I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello everyone, my name is Cindy and I'm so honored to be on this platform, so thank you Melissa for inviting me. And this topic is, like Melissa just said, it's a very sensitive topic. It's something not a lot of people like to speak about, but it's time. It is time, to speak about these things, to break the taboo. As a woman, as someone who's going to be a future mother one day, it's time to now educate ourselves and have these difficult conversations in order to now, impact other generations and make sure that the mistakes of the past do not get repeated again. So thank you, Melissa.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be with me here. We've grown up in a society or in a community where so many things are taboo, and to explore topics like that, you have to be very careful of what people would think. But like Cindy said, it's time to break that taboo and actually take the courage to stand up, like you say, as women, as mothers. And if no one is talking about it, then who will be talking about it? That's why we sit in front of you today, and we are going to go into this in the best of our knowledge and just bring awareness. And that's why I'm emphasizing on you sharing the video applicable to you, but it might help somebody else who needs it. Today's topic is, I say, child sexual abuse in the African community. What is child sexual abuse for you?
So for me, child sexual abuse is having sexual contact or sexual relations with a minor. So a minor is anyone under the age of 16 when it comes to anything sexual, according to the law. And so any sexual activity or relation with someone who is not able to give their own consent, so they may not totally understand what they are participating in or what they are engaging in. That's what I would define as child abuse.
Can you just give us a definition of what consent is?
Okay. So consent is giving your permission or your agreement to do something. And in the case of child sexual abuse, of course, somebody who is under the age, who doesn't, like I said before, understand what they are engaging in, they can't give consent. So anything that is against that definition, I will definitely class as child sexual abuse.
Okay, thank you very much. There are different types of sexual abuse. Sexual abuse doesn't just mean penetration as such. I would say sexual abuse, there is two types of sexual abuse. I'm just gonna read a little bit from this. The term sexual abuse includes a range of activities like intercourse, attempted intercourse, oral genital contact, fondling of genital directly or through clothing, exposing children to adult sexual activity or pornography, and the use of child for prostitution or pornography. Child sexual abuse could be summarized into two broad groups as contact and non-contact form of sexual abuse. So when we speak about contact sexual abuse, we see the touching, and when we look at non-contact sexual abuse, this includes forcing the victim to watch pornography, that is sexual abuse for a child. Do you think people who go through this, does that impact how they turn out as adults?
Yes, definitely. I think sometimes, you know, somebody who's very observant
Yeah.
will be able to see little signs. There are always little signs that show you that a child has been sexually abused. Sometimes you can see a child will be very timid.
Yeah.
A child that used to be a bit more outgoing suddenly becomes very timid. Sometimes they change around the abuser. So always watch. It's always important for parents to be observant about how their kids interact with other people. And also, it can also cause later on in life hypersexuality, which is now being very, engaged or very actively sexual because they were exposed at such a young age. And there's also behavioral things. There could be people who don't trust as much.
Yeah.
People who are scared of being touched. You know, so you may try and touch someone and they just flinch.
Yeah.
For me, that's already a red flag. And sometimes we always look at people with this judging eye, and especially in the African community, sometimes as Congolese, sometimes we'll be like, hey, I look back at day. But why? You know, sometimes there's a why. And it's so important. It's so important to be, especially as a parent, just be observant of your child, know your child, be able to identify when there's a change. Yeah.
Oh wow, that is amazing. Like what you just highlighted there, for parents to be observant of you. What can a parent do? For example, you notice that your child become what's the word for it? Where they keep themselves to themselves. They don't want to talk. They don't want to get involved with activity as they used to. As a parent, what can you do? Part of growing up is just part of puberty for a child to just suddenly change. What can you do?
Okay, I mean, in some cases it can be that it's just puberty and etc. But that's why it's so important to have that open relationship with your child. You know, have that safe space that your child is able to come to you and they know that I can speak to mom or I can speak to dad and I know that they're not going to judge me. I know that I'm not going to get in trouble for what I'm going to say. And so it's so important as a parent as well, and within the African community as well, to have that communication with your child. And it's something I feel like, you know, sometimes it's lacking. You know, sometimes we can do better, especially with people in like their teens and their parents. I realize maybe when it comes to about our age, we're now friends with our parents. The communication is a bit more open. But especially with like young teens, younger children, they don't have that safe space where they can speak to their parents openly. So definitely open up that communication with your child and, you know, be observant and sometimes ask questions. Don't be judgmental of what you hear. And that will definitely obviously encourage your child to speak, at least.
So how about for a parent who's tried so hard to have a relationship with the child and the child just does not want to open up? Number one, I want to find out what I want us to explore is, how do children get to that point where they don't really feel safe to discuss things with their parents? That's the first part. And number two is, why would the child not feel safe to discuss things with their parents, especially when it comes to sexual abuse? Like, why would the child not feel that I can actually speak to my mother, I can speak to whoever obviously is looking after me?
Okay. I think sometimes there's this cultural factor. I think how, for example, our parents were raised and how we were raised in the Western world or growing up in the Western world is very different. I feel like most of the time our parents were raised in environments where you can't really speak to mom, you can't really speak to dad. You know, it's more like, you know, the parents are the disciplinarians, but you kind of have to figure out life by yourself. And so our parents now are just repeating the cycle. That's all they know. They're not doing it on purpose, but that's all they know. You know, so then when a child now, for example, born and raised in Europe, has now gone through this sexual abuse and now they living in a house where mom and dad are just there to discipline them. Mom is just there to beat you when you do something wrong. I don't see how they will feel safe to now just say, Mom, listen, this person did this to me, or they touched me inappropriately. They wouldn't have that courage or that boldness to speak, you know. And also sometimes it's another factor is education.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about child abuse. Somebody who maybe is 6 or 7,
Yeah.
maybe they don't even know that what they're experiencing is child abuse.
Exactly.
There
Yeah,
may be
true.
something, you know, in their minds that maybe says, okay, this isn't right.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, how do they convey it? How do they say it to somebody else for it to make sense? You know, at a young age, those are supposed to be your innocent years,
yes.
so you don't know these things. So it's also that, and I also think fear. Fear is a very big factor, and a lot of the time, obviously, like I'm a girl, so I went to a girls' school. I've heard things, and sometimes they will say, "Oh, this person did this to me," but they told me if I told anybody, I would die. Or if I told anybody, your mum will hate you. And because you're so naive and vulnerable in that moment, you accept it.
Yeah.
And so then that just becomes like your burden to carry and to deal with. Yeah. So those are what I think are the factors.
Wow, that's very sad. Like, I really like the point that you made about not knowing the difference. And that's why it is very important as parents, as grown-ups, when we have young children, to just have to be very open. It's so difficult to put yourself in somebody else's shoe and say, why is that parents not teaching the kids this or that? But then this difficult conversation, they need to happen. It's just knowing when is the right time for you to introduce that. Before you know where the child is free, before you know where they're 5, they go to nursery, they go to school, they meet up with people that are more aware probably than them, people that are exposed maybe to these things, children that are exposed maybe to pornography at school. As a parent, you feel like it's not the right time, they're still young, too young for me. But we live in a world where things are just unpredictable.
So many things, and people are exposed to these things so young now. 2022, like sometimes if you speak to these young people, like the things that we found out in our teens, they already know it as at the age of 6 or 7. So the way the world is going, you can't afford not to have these conversations.
And that's why it's very important for parents, actually. Like we said, you can only be responsible for your children. You can only know what you're teaching your children. So you only have responsibility for your children to teach them, to try your best to have an open relationship with them, to the point where they can tell you when things is wrong. They can tell you when they feel that this person has touched me. Like recently, I've seen a video of grown-ups in a school, I think that was on Instagram, where they were actually singing these songs where they were saying, and teach it to children in school so that they are aware that these are my private parts. You can't touch them, just to allow not anyone to just touch your private parts.
That's good.
Yeah, so in this article that I'm reading here, it just says that I'm just gonna read just a little bit of it. It says the African perception. Child sexual abuse is not often regarded as something bad in some society. This could be due to lack of knowledge on the sexual reproductive health and the right of the girl child. But then what they're saying, what I found very sad just reading it, it says that child sexual abuse is not often regarded as something bad in some societies. This could be due to lack of knowledge on the sexual reproductive health and the rights of the girl child.
Wow.
Okay, that's very sad. Like if you think of it, you think that in some society it's normal, like because they're not aware of it. If, for example, an uncle had to touch his niece's breast or touch the bum and squeeze it, it would be seen totally as a normal thing. In some society, this is from the article that I'm reading here. Like in some society, it's totally normal. Why? Because of lack of knowledge. That's why it's very important that we say, in so many cultures, these are the conversations that are seen as taboo.
Yeah.
And the less that we feel, the more that we feel embarrassed or we feel ashamed to talk about these things, it is continuing to happen. That's why we are here to bring awareness. Abuse is happening to boys as well. Boys are being abused. And in African community, it's just probably not just African community, but in many community, these things have just seen okay.
Exactly.
But it's not European community where things like that, when it happens, people are very quick to speak out about it. People are very quick, they're more aware. You are, for example, at work, when your co-worker slap your bum, my goodness, that can get you in serious trouble.
You will lose your job.
Yeah, you will lose. You cannot do that. Not do that. But then in the communities, like in the African community at work, how many boss touch the co-workers at work, and the co-workers are scared to even work because they feel like if they try, they'll probably lose the job.
Exactly.
Awareness is very important. Education is very important. How do we deal with a child that's being abused? Like now we found out that this kid is being abused by one of the relatives, is being abused by someone that we know. How do we deal with that?
Okay. I think one of the first things is recognizing that this child is the victim. And so this mindset of maybe the child did something to seduce or to entice the abuser should not be in our minds, because that's actually something I've heard before, where it's like, oh, maybe she did this, maybe she did that. No child can do anything that will now provoke a fully grown adult to abuse them sexually. So recognize what we need to do for firstly is to recognize that the child is the victim, and also show them, because in their minds maybe they're thinking, oh, this happened because I did this. Especially if they're more advanced and maybe in their teens, for example, early teens. Maybe I did this, that's why he touched me. No, the victim, nobody can do anything to be sexually abused. And so recognizing with the victim that it's not their fault. And secondly, helping the victim to get over it. I think the best thing to do actually is have that conversation with the victim if they're happy, for example, to report it to the police. Because as much as maybe the initial reaction is, okay, I'm telling the police, for example, which maybe in African communities now, that's probably something that will be done more and more. But you have to also remember that the victim has to be comfortable, because you telling the police is now opening up the door for the victim to now interviews with the police, maybe having to go to court, and maybe that's something they don't want to deal with. So now identifying how the victim is able to overcome the stress or the trauma that they've been through. And another thing is, don't cover an abuser. I cannot say this enough, and I'm saying it with so much passion because I've actually there's somebody I knew who went through sexual abuse, and I believe she was very young at the time. Very young at a time, and she suffered child sexual abuse in the hands of her stepfather. And the stepfather groomed her. So that's another thing that a lot of abusers do, is they groom you. They start with you when you're young with little things, and eventually as you're getting older, they escalate in their abuse or the type of abuse. So they may start with, like you said, non-sexual abuse, and then now when you're older, you go to the sexual abuse, the contact one, sorry. And so she went through this to a point that I believe at the age of 13, she fell pregnant. She fell pregnant, and at the time, because now I think she's in her 30s now, in her late 30s, married with children, overcome the stress, we thank God. But she had to go through such a stressful process, and having to tell her mum, and everybody was like, I remember so many people in the community saying, like aunties and uncles saying, oh, Seke alinga kiango, Seke, she liked it. If she didn't like it, why didn't she tell her mum? But we failed to recognize that somebody who has, for example, been groomed, So they've been abused for years, for years, for years. And now in their mind, they feel like it's normal.
Yeah.
They will not automatically open up their mouth and say, "Mommy, I've been abused." You know? And I also saw a really bad side to it, and this is in the Congolese community, that this man who was her stepfather, he went to prison. I'm not sure how long he went to prison for, but I remember he went to prison, I was very small, and he came out fairly recently. And it was so disappointing to see aunties and uncles who once condemned him when they found out everything that he did, now accepting him back into the community. And for me and a lot of people that knew the person, like, I spoke, like, I was asking aunties and uncles, like, you want me to speak to this guy after what he did? And they're like, oh no, it's okay, he's already done his time, it's fine. But what we failed to recognize, that that's a way of covering, because this man, for example, who's abused, let's say he was, because he did it to somebody who's underage, so he's a pedophile. He was a pedophile. And pedophilia is an illness. Pedophilia is an illness. And so somebody who's a pedophile can re-offend. It doesn't matter whether he went to prison or did 10 years or 20 years. He may come out and do it again. And it was worrying for me to see, because it's like, this is somebody, you know, the victim was somebody that was a bit older than me, but it's like this uncle, this stepfather of hers, was somebody who's very respected in the community, and so the way they accepted him back, I just couldn't understand. I couldn't understand. Till this day, I don't stand for it, because it's covering. And how do you know he won't do it again? So yeah, that's another thing I would say. Don't cover an abuser. An abuser is an abuser, whether they've been to prison or not. They are an abuser, and it's not safe to tell your girls, oh, it's fine, you can be around him because he's done his time. It's not good. It's not good. And that's even hiding or covering evil, in my opinion. Yeah.
Wow, that is very that's very sad. Such a sad story to hear. And so if you, well, from everything that we've spoken about today, what would you say, except from obviously speaking to the girls and all these I mean, not just the girls and the boys as well, to children in general, what would you say what can a parent do to prevent these things from happening? What step can they take to minimize the risk of abuse to children?
Okay. I would say be observant, be alert as a parent. If you see there's a certain, family friend or member of your family that your child is not very comfortable around, I say don't ignore the signs. Always ask. Always seek to see their body language. So that comes from knowing your child as well. So know your child. And so you'd be able to spot these signs. And also, you said something sad earlier about the statistics. 91% of this child abuse is done by people that they know, people that are trusted by, for example, parents. So I would say, be very careful who you leave your children with. I wouldn't say don't leave your children with anyone, but just be very careful. Be very careful. Know how to check on your children, even if they are with other with family members or etc. So always, again, that just stems with being alert and observant as a parent, and also having that good relationship with your child. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, you have to have that communication with your children. We're living in a world that it's not how it was 30 years ago, and so being able to speak to your children so that they know that they are able to you without judgment, without getting into trouble, is so important. So because in those days that something goes wrong, you will blame yourself. a parent will literally blame themselves, like, how comes this happened underneath my roof and I didn't know anything about it?
Yeah.
But you're ignoring the fact that you and your child don't have that relationship. So how can you expect the child to now speak? You know, so have that good relationship with your child. That will definitely help them. And also, you know, just if you know somebody has a history, or a family member or a relative has a history of inappropriate behavior, just make sure you don't leave them around your children.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, they've changed, it's not they're the uncle, they're the auntie. No, if they are inappropriate or make comments, that's what careful, like, especially in the African community, this thing about, oh, my wife, these jokes, these little jokes about, oh, a little child being your wife or etc. Just be very careful with those. Not saying that always leads to abuse, but sometimes, you know, you just have to be wise. Be wise. Be wise.
Thank you so much, Cindy. So before we get to that stage where the abuse start happening, how can parents make sure that these things does not happen?
Okay, I think, like I said before, the relationship with your child is so important.
Yeah.
Number two, being careful who you leave your child with. It doesn't matter if they're family or a family member, somebody you know or you trust. You have to be very careful. There's always signs. Do you know what? I think a lot of the time we get ourselves into trouble because we ignore certain signs. So I do believe being observant and alert will really avoid certain situations. So, you know, prevention is better than cure.
Definitely.
So being alert as a parent, that's the main things that I would say.
Thank you very much. And to that, I just want to add that it's very, like you say, you spoke about parents being alert. It's important for parents as well. Alertness also comes in where you leave your children playing amongst themselves. Keep an eye. What are the kids doing? Are they still just playing? Like I always say, children are very curious individual. Yes, they would want to know what's happening. They want to know, oh, this is what I saw. Why is my body different to yours? Why is my body part? Why do I have this and you don't have that? You see, so it's very important for parents to actually keep an eye. Don't just leave children playing, you're not even there, and just say, okay, it's fine, they're just playing, they're okay. No, keep an eye and constantly watch out. What are they doing? What are they talking about? Don't just be a parent, you leave your kid and then you're just comfortable, they find they're playing, they're okay. No, you have to keep it going to check, okay, are they still playing? What are they talking about? What are they watching? If they have iPad, if they have phone, where are they going? What website are they on? Is very important, that was also.
I actually really like what you said, Melissa. You said about children amongst themselves, and that's something we forget, especially in the African community. There's this, I don't know if it's a taboo or maybe it's just ignorance in the sense of even amongst children, a lot of these abuse cases if you speak to a lot of people, you will hear, oh, when I was younger, me and my cousin played this game, oh, papa and mama, and we did this and we did that. And both parties are children. Yes, but that is also a form of abuse.
Oh, definitely.
But legally, that's not the definition. Obviously, legally, it's a child and an adult. But these things do happen. And so, like you said, parents, watch over your kids, even amongst themselves. There's a lot of things that go on that maybe parents ignore. And these things cause long-term issues, you know, so be vigilant. Parents, be vigilant.
As I said earlier, I said that the article, I wasn't too sure when it was published, but like all the things that I've read for you from the article, this article is published in 2020. So
that's recent.
It's very recent, only 2 years ago. So which is showing that these things is still happening, and it's happening more and more frequent. Looked at a couple of African countries, but they've looked at the English countries, but they've not gone into the French countries. It would be interesting to see if there was a difference in statistics, there was a difference in how people behave, there was a different rate of sexual abuse. And it is also important to highlight that many cases of sexual abuse, especially in the African community, it does not get reported. For example, if I had to go here and go to Congo and do a study on sexual abuse, not many people will feel
comfortable
talking to me about it. So there are so many cases that are underreported. I have one more question for you, Cindy. So if someone, a child, was watching us today, and that child went through sexual abuse, them inappropriately, or someone that's threatened them that if they try and say what they've done with them, they will lose their life, or no one will like them, or they will be bullied, or something around that line. What would you tell to that child today? What would your message be to that child that's watching today and has gone through this themselves?
I would say it's not your fault. That's my first message I would say to them. There's nothing that you could have done to push an adult or somebody else to act in that way. So it's not your fault. And I would say find yourself somebody who you can speak to, whether that is an adult who can now help you escalate it if you're comfortable with going to the police or social services, for example, or just a friend. Have an outlet, somewhere that you can release all that anger or all that fear, or just express your feelings, because anything that you suppress will later come out and explode. So you have to find a way to deal with it, however it looks like or however it is for you. So whether it's just speaking to somebody is enough, or going to the police, that might be enough for you. Obviously I can't dictate how you will deal with it, but I would say that. But also being in the faith and being a Christian, I would say, maybe one day you will have the platform to now speak and to prevent this happening to other people. And it wasn't your fault, and God loves you. God loves you. He did not allow this to happen to you as a punishment or etc. But just know that there are people that you can save by speaking up. There are people that you can help that by speaking up, maybe by just your act of courage of saying something or speaking to somebody else will get saved, And so I would always say, deal with it how you feel to deal with it. There's no right or wrong way. Melissa, this is so powerful. Like, God bless you. This is powerful to speak about these things, because I'm so sorry I'm getting so passionate about it, but it's like, this is something we need to speak about, and we need to talk, we need to speak, because the more we keep quiet about it, the more this is happening, and the more there are people, like children, now being raised as adults with these hurt and anger and all these resentment in their hearts, now raising children and repeating the cycle. And so we need to be able to be bold enough to break the cycle. And so God bless you, like La Santé nous. This is so powerful. Sorry, I'm a minister, so I'm always gonna bring God into it somehow. But God bless you for allowing this platform, and I pray that this message goes out to somebody, and I hope that somebody's listening to us today and knows that they're not the reason why this happened to them. It is not your fault. It is not your fault. It can never ever be your fault. But any person that speaks up, that takes courage. It takes boldness. It takes courage. So any person who comes out after this, who watches this and who's inspired to speak about it, just we actually salute you, because it takes so much courage, especially in the African community. You don't know what your people around you are gonna say, but you're bold enough to say it. So we actually salute you, and I really pray that you get the healing you deserve.
Amen.
Yeah. Amen.
Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you very, very much. I just don't know what to add from what you've just said right now. So thank you so much, Cindy, for coming with me on this platform. I know this was a very sensitive topic. We didn't know how we would go to it. Please make sure you like, you subscribe, you comment, and you share the video with your friends and family. Thank you. See you next time. Bye-bye.